aircraft landed at Haneda Airport in Ota, Tokyo, from Fukuoka Airport at 5:12 p.m. After almost an hour on the ground, Flight 123 pushed back from at 6:04 p.m. and took OFF at 6:12 p.m., 12 minutes behind schedule. 12 minutes after takeoff, at near cruising altitude, the aircraft underwent rapid depressurization, bringing down the ceiling around the rear lavatories, damaging the unpressurized fuselage aft of the plane, unseating the vertical stabilizer, and severing all 4 hydraulic lines. Captain Takahama contacted Tokyo Area Control Center to declare an emergency and request a return to Haneda Airport, descending and following emergency landing vectors to Oshima. Tokyo Control approved a right-hand turn to a heading of 090 degree, and the aircraft entered an initial right-hand bank of 40 degrees, several degrees greater than observed previously. Captain Takahama ordered First Officer Sasaki to reduce the bank angle, and expressed confusion when the aircraft did not respond to the control wheel being turned. The flight engineer reported that hydraulic pressure was dropping. The captain repeated the order to reduce the bank angle, as the autopilot had disengaged. He ordered the first officer to bank it back, then ordered him to pull up. None of these attempted maneuvers produced a response. The pilots realized the aircraft had become uncontrollable, and captain ordered the co-pilot to descend. After confirming that the pilots were declaring an emergency, the controller asked the nature of the emergency. At this point, hypoxia appeared to have begun setting in, as the pilots did not respond. Also, the captain and co-pilot asked the flight engineer repeatedly if hydraulic pressure had been lost, seemingly unable to comprehend it. Tokyo Control contacted the aircraft again and repeated the direction to descend and turn to a 90 degrees heading to Oshima. Only then did the captain report that the aircraft had become uncontrollable. Tokyo Control asked if they could descend, and Captain Takahama replied that they were now descending, stating that their altitude was 24,000 feet. Captain Takahama declined Tokyo Control's suggestion to divert to Nagoya Airport, 72 nautical miles away, instead preferring to land at Haneda, which had the facilities to handle the 747. Flight data recorder shows that the flight did not descend, but was rising and falling uncontrollably. With the total loss of hydraulic control and non-functional control surfaces, the aircraft entered fugoid oscillations lasting about 90 seconds, in which airspeed decreased as it climbed and increased as it fell. The rise in airspeed increased the lift over the wings, resulting in the aircraft climbing and slowing down, then descending and gaining speed again. Almost immediately after the separation of the stabilizer and rudder removed the only means of damping yaw, the aircraft began to exhibit Dutch roll, simultaneously yawing right and banking left, before yawing back left and banking right. At some points, the banking motion became very profound, with large arcs of around 50 degrees in cycles of 12 seconds. Despite the complete loss of control, the pilots continued to turn the control wheel, pull on the control column, and move the rudder pedals up until the moment of the crash. The pilots also began efforts to establish control using differential engine thrust, with limited success. The unpressurized aircraft rose and fell in an altitude range of 20,000 to 25,000 feet for 18 minutes, from the moment of decompression, with the pilots seemingly unable to figure out how to descend without flight controls. The flight engineer did say they should put on their oxygen masks when word reached the cockpit that the rearmost passenger masks had stopped working. None of the pilots put on their oxygen masks, however, though the captain simply replied yes to both suggestions by the flight engineer to do so. The accident report indicates that the captain's disregard of the suggestion is one of several features regarded as hypoxia-related in the CVR record. Their voices can be heard relatively clearly on the cockpit area microphone for the entire duration, until the crash, indicating that they did not put on their oxygen masks at any point in the flight. The captain ordered maximum engine power to attempt to get the aircraft to climb to avoid the mountains, and engine power was added abruptly before being reduced back to near idle. The aircraft rapidly pitched up to 40 degrees, and the airspeed dropped down to 108 knots 291 and stalling at 9,000. The captain immediately ordered maximum power as the stick shaker sounded, and the aircraft's airspeed increased as it was brought into an unsteady climb, possibly in order to prevent another stall. Then the captain lowered the flaps to 5 units. The leading edge flaps, except for the left and right outer groups, were also extended. The controller attempted to call the aircraft again via the Selkel radio system. During the entire period, the Selkel alarm continued to ring, but the pilots did not react. Suddenly, bank angle exceeded 60 degrees, and the nose began to drop, Captain Takahama immediately ordered the flaps to be retracted and power was added abruptly, but still with higher power settings on the left engines than on the right. The asymmetric thrust settings continued to increase as the bank angle continued and exceeded 80 degrees. In the final moments, as the airspeed exceeded 340 knots, the pitch attitude leveled out and the aircraft ceased descending, with the aircraft and passengers/crew being subjected to 3G of upward vertical acceleration. The aircraft was still in a right-hand bank when the right side of the plane struck the trees on top of a ridge located 1.4 kilometers north-northwest of Mount Mikuni. The backward shock of the impact, measuring 0.14 G, in addition to causing the loss of the thrust of the fourth engine, caused the aircraft to roll sharply to the right and the nose to drop again. The aircraft continued on this trajectory for 3 seconds. The aircraft flipped on its back, struck another ridge 570 meters northwest from the second ridge, near Mount Takamagara, and exploded.